President Zelensky, you remarked before that Israel's right to defense is indisputable, as the right to self-defense is codified under the UN Charter. Meanwhile, you and your Western allies have also repeatedly referred to the rule of law when conducting relations and responding to hostilities internally and in the international community. As such, don't you think there should be a collective call from yourself and your allies to call upon the Israeli government to adhere to international humanitarian law, namely the principle of proportionality, the distinction between combatants and civilians, and the prohibition of inflicting unnecessary suffering on the civilian Palestinian population? Thank you.
Thank you so much. First and foremost, how to counter any narratives and disinformation. To look into each fact separately, look into details, and to see the truth. You can ask the question as you have now posed, and to join all the questions to unite the attacks of Hamas against Israel and then the pressure of Israel to Gaza. Or you can look into details. Ukraine is a just country that respects international law and the UN Charter. Ukraine has said if terrorists from Hamas, and this was in the first days of the terrorist attack against Israel, if terrorists of Hamas attack civilians, Israel has the right to defend. So let's not mix everything to one issue. And then afterwards, Ukraine has said, when Israel was in the territory of Gaza and there was a humanitarian crisis, Ukraine said, first, we are ready to help humanitarianly to Gaza. Secondly, you need to respect international laws. Thirdly, Ukraine recognizes two states, Israel and Palestine, and it will do everything for Israel to stop, to end this conflict so that civilians do not suffer. So please, do not mix the two periods into one. Thank you.
The new voice of Ukraine provided a truer translation of President Zelensky's statement. Ukraine said that if Hamas terrorists attacked civilians on the first day of the attack on Israeli civilians, Israel has the right to defend itself, and after that, when Israel was in Gaza and there was a humanitarian crisis, Ukraine said, first, we are ready to provide humanitarian aid to Gaza. Second, we must respect international law. Third, Ukraine recognizes two states, both Israel and Palestine, and will do everything to make Israel stop, to end this conflict, and to prevent civilians from suffering. Donald Trump is an Israel-first traitor who supports the Israeli genocide of the Palestinians. Nikki Haley may enter his administration should Trump be re-elected president. She inscribed a genocidal curse on Palestinian civilians onto an Israeli bomb, calling for the Israelis to finish the Palestinians. Haley had this to say to countries which, like Ukraine, recognize the Palestinian state.
And for all those countries who decided to recognize a Palestinian state, do you know what that felt like here in Israel? You just gave credit to Hamas and all that they did. For all those looking at the ICC and ICJ, right before we landed, there were strikes in Tel Aviv. Why? Because the ICC and ICJ just emboldened Hamas. They just gave them everything they needed to know. And when the friends of Israel back off, the terrorists move in.
I want to show you what Nikki Haley, the former Republican presidential candidate, what she wrote on such bombs as we've been discussing. These are bombs that presumptively would be used in Rafah. She signed "Finish them" on the rocket. What's your response to that?
Nikki Haley is disgusting. She's a disgusting human being to do that. That's genocidal language. And it's the language that has the American people turning against our government.
The Times of Israel quoted Trump, who said, if you get me re-elected, we're going to set that movement back 25 or 30 years. It has to be stopped now. One thing I do is, any student that protests, I throw them out of the country. You know, there are a lot of foreign students, as soon as they hear that, they're going to behave. Putin and his cronies regularly claim that President Zelensky is a Nazi, compare him to Hitler, and that Ukrainians in general are all Nazi fascists.
А то, что аргумент он выдвигает, какая может быть у нас нацификация, когда я еврей, я, если правильно помню, боюсь ошибиться, но, по-моему, у Гитлера тоже была.
Attempting to undermine Ukrainian President Zelensky's Jewish identity and at the same time justify Russia's claims of trying to denazify the country, Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov saying it doesn't matter that Zelensky is Jewish, as even Adolf Hitler had Jewish blood, and that, quote, Jews are among the worst anti-Semites.
At the same time that he is defending Palestinian children from Israeli genocide, Zelensky is demanding that Russians stop kidnapping Ukrainian kids and is defending Ukraine from Putin's genocide of the Ukrainian people.
Together, we are also bringing back Ukrainian children who were deported to Russia from the occupied territories of our country. And we know for sure about 20,000 Ukrainian children who were kidnapped by Putin, kidnapped and taken to Russia, and we know their names. And Russia itself claimed that it took several hundred thousand of our children from the occupied territories of Ukraine. Only the worst criminals do such things. And we must bring all of our children back to Ukraine, to relatives, to parents,